The detective who walked away from the Caribbean's most famous police station did something no other Death in Paradise lead has ever managed. He got a happy ending, and then an entire series of his own. And the man who plays him once came within a bookmaker's whisker of becoming Doctor Who. Fact 1. Humphrey came home for love. When D.I. Humphrey Goodman left Death in Paradise in 2017, he broke the show's most reliable pattern. St. Marie's detectives depart in coffins, in disgrace, or in a hurry. Humphrey left for love following Martha Lloyd back to England after 4 series, the first lead in the programme's history to walk off the island happy. His arrival on St. Marie had been nobody's idea of a fairy tale. Humphrey was the replacement, parachuted in after the murder of the original detective, greeted by an audience openly skeptical that the show could survive the change. 4 series later, he left as the most beloved lead the island had known, which made his happy exit feel less like a departure than a reward. For 6 years, that was simply the end of the story. Then the BBC did something almost unheard of for the franchise. It went looking for a character it had already said goodbye to. Beyond Paradise picked Humphrey up years later, engaged to Martha, leaving London behind and starting again in her hometown in Devon. The premise flips the original show on its head. In the Caribbean, Humphrey was the awkward Englishman baffled by Paradise. In Shipton Abbott, he is the overqualified big city detective, baffled by a town where the crime wave is a stolen tractor and where everyone knows his business before he does. It worked because the ending viewers had been given was never quite an ending. Millions had spent 6 years wondering whether Humphrey and Martha made it. Beyond Paradise was built on the simple, generous decision to answer them. Fact 2. He was nearly Doctor Who. Kris Marshall has spent his career being one of the most familiar faces in Britain, and in 2017 he came remarkably close to becoming its most famous alien. When Peter Capaldi announced his departure from Doctor Who, Marshall was the bookmaker's runaway favourite to take over the TARDIS, with the press treating his casting as all but confirmed. It never happened. The role went, historically, to Jodie Whittaker, the first woman to play the Doctor, and Marshall's near miss became a footnote. But it says everything about his standing at the time. He had just left Death in Paradise, and the nation's assumption was that something enormous came next. The familiarity had been decades in the making. Marshall was Nick, the hapless eldest son in my family, one of the biggest BBC sitcoms of its era. He was Colin, the hopeful romantic who flies to America in Love Actually, and for years he was the face of the BT adverts, playing out an entire fictional family life in commercial breaks. There is a pleasing symmetry to the near miss. Doctor Who is the story of a mysterious outsider who arrives in a community, fixes what is broken, and charms everyone despite himself. Marshall has, in effect, been playing a version of that part for years, just with a notebook instead of a sonic screwdriver, and Devon instead of the universe. What came next was not a time machine, but a harbour town in the West Country. Given the choice between the most famous role in British science fiction and a clumsy detective with a battered satchel, fate handed Marshall the satchel, and it turned out to be one of the best-watched jobs on television. Fact 3. Martha is from Not Going Out. Martha Lloyd, the warm, endlessly patient heart of Beyond Paradise, is played by Sally Bretton, and for millions of comedy viewers she is instantly recognisable as someone else entirely. Lucy, opposite Lee Mack, in Not Going Out, one of the longest-running sitcoms in BBC history. For years, Bretton effectively led a television double life. On one channel she was sparring with Lee Mack in a studio sitcom, on another she was running a Devon guest house and navigating life with Humphrey. 2 continuing hit series, 2 completely different registers. One actress, a workload almost nobody in British television carries. Not Going Out is no small commitment either. The sitcom has been running since 2006, making it one of the longest-running live-action comedies the BBC has ever broadcast, and Bretton has been at its centre for nearly the whole journey, from flatmate to wife, to matriarch of the show's chaotic household. Her history with Humphrey predates the spin-off. Bretton first appeared as Martha in Death in Paradise itself, as the woman who finally gave the island's most accident-prone detective a reason to smile and then a reason to leave. When Beyond Paradise was created, there was never a question of recasting. It makes her one of television's quietest success stories. While the publicity has always centered on Marshall, the series only functions because Martha is as fully drawn as Humphrey, and because Bretton plays her with the timing of a woman who spent 2 decades holding her own against one of Britain's fastest comedians. Fact 4. Devon is actually Cornwall. Beyond Paradise is set in Shipton Abbott, a fictional market town in Devon. The town where it is actually filmed is in a different county altogether, Looe, on the south coast of Cornwall, whose harbour, bridge and steep narrow streets appear in almost every episode. The sleight of hand was noticed immediately by the Cornish. Locals took gentle exception to their town being passed off as the county next door, and the Devon versus Cornwall of it all became a running joke in the coverage of the show. Cornwall provides the scenery, Devon gets the credit. Filming a series in a working harbour town brings its own adventures. Tides, weather, and holiday crowds all have opinions about television schedules, and the production shares its streets with fishing boats and holidaymakers rather than closed studio lots, part of why the town on screen feels genuinely lived in rather than dressed. For Louis itself, the arrangement has been transformative. The town has seen a genuine tourism boost from the series, with visitors arriving to find the police station, the harbour and the streets they know from television, a seaside economy, given a year-round advertisement on BBC One. Eagle-eyed viewers spot the joins anyway. Landmarks, shop fronts and stretches of coastline familiar from Cornish holidays keep appearing under Devonian names, and pointing them out has become a small spectator sport among the show's devoted audience, an affectionate game the production has long since made peace with. It places Beyond Paradise in a grand British tradition. The geography of beloved television is almost never what it claims. Doc Martin's Portwen is really Port Isaac. Midsummer's villages are scattered across 2 counties. And Devon's cosiest crime hotspot is, and always has been, Cornish. Fact 5. Lynn from Partridge runs the office. Look closely at Shipton Abbott Police Station, and a remarkable comedy pedigree emerges. The station's indispensable civilian support officer, Margot Martins, is played by Felicity Montague, known to a generation as Lynn, Alan Partridge's long-suffering, endlessly loyal assistant, one of the great supporting characters in British comedy. Beside her is P.C. Kelby Hartford, played by Dylan Llewellyn, instantly recognisable to millions as James, the terrified wee English fella from Derry Girls. In Beyond Paradise, he is once again the innocent abroad, the sweet local lad slowly learning what policing actually involves. And presiding over the family side of the show is Barbara Flynn as Martha's mother Anne, an actress with one of the most quietly distinguished careers in British television, stretching back through Cracker and the Beiderbecke affair. Her scenes give the series its emotional ballast and its sharpest edges. Margot herself has become a quiet fan favourite, the immovable object of Shipton Abbott Station, fiercely territorial about her office, her procedures and her colleagues, with a deadpan authority that no detective inspector would dare challenge. Montague plays her, as she played Lynn, as a woman who is entirely without power and somehow runs everything. This is casting as a secret weapon. None of these actors is treated as a comedy cameo. They are simply given roles worthy of them. But for viewers who know their faces, every scene in the station carries a faint, pleasurable echo of 40 years of British television. If you're enjoying this, it would mean a lot if you subscribed. It helps us keep making videos like this one. Just hit that button and you'll never miss a new one. Fact 6. It broke the franchise formula. Death in Paradise runs on one of the most dependable engines in television, a murder in the first minute, a locked circle of suspects, a solution before bedtime. Beyond Paradise made a decision that looked, on paper, like commercial suicide. It threw the engine away. In Shipton Abbott, there is frequently no murder at all. Cases turn on missing persons, strange thefts, land disputes, old grudges, and mysteries with roots in the town's history. The crimes are smaller, the puzzle is why anyone would commit them at all, which often proves stranger than any killing. It was a braver decision than it looks now. The Murder of the Week structure is the franchise's proven money machine, refined across a decade and exported around the world. Walking away from it with the franchise's own name on the poster meant betting the brand on an untested theory about why people actually watch. The gamble was that audiences watched the original less for the bodies than for the warmth, the puzzle, and the place. The gamble was right. The gentler format gave the series room for something Death in Paradise can rarely afford, continuing stories about its own characters' lives running underneath the cases. It quietly expanded what a cozy crime drama is allowed to be. Beyond Paradise proved that a mainstream Friday night detective show does not actually need a corpse, it needs a community worth caring about, and a detective who cares about it more than anyone. Fact 7. Esther was passed over. Beyond Paradise begins with an injustice the show has never pretended away. DS Esther Williams, played by Zara Ahmadi, is the capable, experienced officer who effectively runs Shipton Abbott's policing and who watches the senior post she had every right to expect go instead to a charming outsider from London. Most series would have used that setup for a week of friction and then forgotten it. Beyond Paradise let it breathe. Esther's frustration at Humphrey's arrival was written as entirely reasonable because it was, and the partnership that grew between them had to be earned across whole series, not handed over in a single case. Ahmadi plays the long game beautifully, the slow shift from resentment to respect to real friendship, conveyed mostly in glances across the station. It is the kind of understated television acting that never wins awards and quietly holds entire series together. It gives the show a grown-up spine beneath the coziness. Esther is the realist to Humphrey's dreamer, the local to his incomer, the person who knows every family in town while he is still learning the road names. The cases are solved by the collision of the two, and there is a small joke hiding in her name that the show wears lightly. Esther Williams was also the name of Hollywood's most famous swimming star of the 1940s and 50s. Shipton Abbott's most grounded police officer shares her name with the queen of the Hollywood pool. Fact 8. The heartbreak beneath the coziness. For all its gentle Friday night warmth, Beyond Paradise has carried one of the most delicately handled sad storylines in recent British drama: Humphrey and Martha's long, bruising attempt to become parents. The first series confronted pregnancy loss directly, a subject mainstream cozy drama has historically stepped around and played it not as a single tragic episode, but as an ongoing weight the couple carry together, affecting how they work, argue, hope and comfort each other long afterwards. The response showed how rare it was. Viewers who had lived the same experience wrote about seeing it reflected honestly in a program they watched for comfort, and the storyline was widely praised for refusing both melodrama and easy resolution. The show let sadness and sweetness live in the same house. The couple's search for a family did not end there, and later series followed it into new territory explored, with the same patience and the same refusal to rush to a tidy answer. Few dramas this gentle have trusted their audience with this much unresolved longing. It is the secret of the whole series. Beyond Paradise looks like escapism, but it anchors the escapism in a marriage tested by real grief. The lightest detective drama on television carries genuine weight in its foundations, which is precisely why the lightness works. Fact 9. A launch nobody predicted. Spin-offs are television's riskiest bet. For every success, a dozen vanish within a series, dragging a little of the parent show's reputation down with them. Beyond Paradise did the opposite of vanishing. It arrived in February 2023 as one of the biggest new drama launches British television had seen in years. The scheduling helped tell the story. The series settled into Friday evenings on BBC One, the traditional home of comfort television, and became appointment viewing for exactly the audience broadcasters spend fortunes chasing and rarely catch. Households watching together, week after week, in real time. The numbers stunned even the BBC. Millions tuned in for the first episode, the audience held across the series, and the show settled almost immediately into the rare territory of a guaranteed renewal, with further series and Christmas specials following as fast as they could be filmed. The audience skewed exactly where the franchise has always been strongest: older viewers, families watching together, and the enormous constituency that wants its crimes solved without cruelty. In an age of dark, violent prestige drama, a kind detective in a small town turned out to be counter-programming of the most powerful sort. It also settled an old industry argument. Skeptics had insisted Death in Paradise only worked because of the sunshine. Beyond Paradise took the sunshine away, replaced it with drizzle and a harbour, and kept the audience proof that the warmth was never coming from the weather. Fact 10. The Paradise Universe. What began in 2011 as one detective show on a Caribbean island has quietly become something almost unique in British television. A franchise. Death in Paradise continues on St. Marie. Beyond Paradise thrives in the West Country. And Return to Paradise has carried the formula to Australia, with a detective solving crimes in a coastal town near Sydney. 3 continuing series, 3 continents worth of scenery, 1 shared DNA, the reassuring puzzle, the reluctant outsider, the community that solves itself. No other British crime drama has ever spun itself into a family of shows this way. Even Morse's celebrated universe expanded backwards and sideways, never abroad. The parent show, meanwhile, has become an institution in its own right, passing its 100th episode and continuing through new detectives and new eras. Still among the most watched dramas in Britain more than a decade after skeptics dismissed it as a holiday postcard with a body count. At the centre of it stands Humphrey Goodman, the only detective in the franchise's history to lead 2 of its shows. The character created as a mid-series replacement, the awkward new man sent to fill another detective's shoes, ended up becoming the connective tissue of the entire enterprise. And the whole expansion traces back to that single romantic decision in 2017. A detective chose love over the job, walked off the most beautiful island on television, and accidentally founded an empire in the rain.